Díomh agus fáilte Ash. You're all very welcome to another episode of Irish in Toronto. Today I'll be speaking with Rory O'Shea. I first became aware of him when I attended a screening of the long-term biopic he created for his mother, the Peggy Delaney Way. Peggy was clearly a force to be reckoned with in the Irish community in Toronto, and the love she had for her home country was passed down to her son Rory. In this conversation, we discuss Rory's understanding of being born to Irish parents while growing up in Toronto, and how he often feels more Irish than Canadian. We discuss his desires to retire in Ireland, and we delve into deeper thoughts towards the end of our chat, focusing on Rory's awareness of his mortality as well as his religious practices. Rory is extremely open in this conversation, and I want to thank him for that. I would still encourage people to download the episodes and to share them with friends and family. Downloads are the easiest indicator for me to gauge how many people I'm reaching with these conversations, so I really appreciate it. I begin our chat by asking Rory if he was born in Toronto.
I'm first generation Canadian along with my older brother Callum, who's 5 years older than me.
Had to get that in there.
I had to get that in there. Yeah, I'm the youngest of four. And the eldest two, Patrick, who just turned 74, and Maria, who's slightly older than Patrick, were both born in Dublin and came here with Mum in 54. Dad was already here by about 6 months' time, just trying to get settled in and figure out the landscape. And he followed his brother, Captain Rory O'Shea, who was the famous Irish Army equestrian, captain of the equestrian team, who was doing very well. He won 16 international events for show jumping, and came here, helped design, as a matter of fact, the horse jumping course for the Royal Canadian Winter Fair. But he branched off into doing something entirely different, which was television production. He started his own production company, Rory O'Shea Limited. My dad was trying to, I wouldn't say follow or ride on the coattails of his kid brother in the same field. He also had, from the Dublin Institute of, what was it now? But it was a year-long course in marketing and advertising and copywriting. So he had some of that background, which was good because he needed something to fall back on as a professional musician. So he was a violinist who had played from the age of 4, very proficient, could read music, was fantastic, had his own trio in Dublin and played at the Savoy and the Gresham hotels. And of course, the live music scene in Dublin was far more prevalent and popular than it would be in a place like Toronto. So Toronto in the mid-50s, as my mom would say, was, quote unquote, a cultural desert. This was not New York or Montreal.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and not welcoming for Irish Catholics at all. So Mum came in 54, and what a welcome, weather-wise for one thing, on the heels of Hurricane Hazel, which had absolutely land-basted the city with winds and rain and flooding. And this was her introduction into this new land in 1954 with a couple of kids in tow, and coming from the cultural hotbed of Dublin and having acted at the Abbey Theatre and been on Radio Éireann at the time, and still, but RTE now. And she was winning all sorts of awards. Golden Voice of Ireland, had been on the air since she was 7 and again in her teenage years. So she had all of that background. And then to come to a place like Toronto, very orange. There was the Orangemen's Parade, not the St. Patrick's Day Parade. And it was tough. So you've got to think about, not only are you coming to a completely different environment, culture shock-wise, but also you think of the patriarchy. You think of the Protestantism that's here. It's she had her work cut out for her.
She did all right, though.
Yeah, she did all right, but she hit the ground running literally, because when she got here, she realized, well, Dad, Cormac, didn't really have anything going on revenue-wise. It was tough for him to find a job. As hard as it was back in Ireland and Dublin in the mid-50s, so many emigrated because of the economic hardship. In Toronto, it was tricky. He certainly couldn't get a gig as a professional violinist. Once again, this was not New York City or Montreal, where the cultural scene and the live music scene and entertainment way more vibrant, and he would have been able to find something. So it was tough. So Mum, with 2 kids along with her, Maria and Patrick, had to eventually start working. And by eventually, I mean within weeks, because had to pay rent.
Which would have been not allowed in Ireland because she was married at the... Well, it would have been...
No, absolutely. Well, in fact, she had to quit her job at Aer Lingus as head flight hostess because she got married. And, of course, there weren't enough jobs for the men. And so, no, you have to be at home and look after the husband and raise the family, the children. And that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. What was it like? How aware were you of your Irishness growing up as a child in Toronto?
It's funny. It evolved over the years because it was omnipresent growing up in a musical family. Mum was singing and played the piano. Dad, as a violinist, also played the piano and was a great singer, great baritone voice. And they would entertain and have people over. And so I got a sense of that. Mum was very involved in the first, the Irish Centre on DuPont and entertaining and that. But she really immersed herself in the Irish community in the 70s and 80s and became that much more involved. She had 4 children now, so there was that. Plus she was working full time. She had a lot on the go. And Dad, God bless him, loved him to death, a great dad. But as far as a husband and a provider, that was lacking. So, he was considered by some of Mum's close friends, her 5th child. Yeah. So she had a lot on her plate. So as far as helping out in the Irish community and being involved in associations and organizations and community efforts, I don't think it really ramped up until she knew the children were old enough to sort of be on their own and look after themselves and stuff like that. But I think that was an outlet for her to maintain her sanity too, because she always missed Ireland. She was the most insanely, fiercely proud Irish woman. And she didn't get a chance to often go back. She did when each of her parents had passed, her mum first and then her father. She'd gone back. But
it's not a nice reason to have to go home. Obviously.
No, exactly. She went back out of, necessity and duty rather than, to visit and to have a vacation and a holiday. But we have all since, gone back over the years, and I've been there with Mom, and sometimes we've been there at the same time, and we've teamed up and rendezvoused wherever it was and took it in. So that was wonderful. And then, many years later, Marlene and I have 2 wonderful children, 20 and 18 years of age, that were both baptized in Ireland. And, they've got their Irish citizenship and their passports, and we would go every couple of years. It was important for me to keep them very much rooted in their roots. And so the indoctrination began at a very early age for them. Yeah. And they love it. They get a kick out of it too.
What was I don't know what I know your mother was such a strong personality, we could do the whole podcast on her. That's not why I contacted you, but it's obviously she's an interesting person. And did you notice any difference in her when her feet were on the ground in Ireland as opposed to being in Toronto?
She felt like no time had passed. It was like it was yesterday. And my sister and I would joke because she was sharp as a tack until the day she left us, which was just a couple of months shy of 86. Anybody that knew her knew how strong and vital and robust and energetic she was, but sharp as a tack as well. So we thought she'd go well to 100 and beyond. It wasn't the case, but when she was in her early to mid 80s and we'd be in Ireland, she'd say, "Oh, this is the number 64 bus. It'll be coming up here. At this time, it'll drop me off." And sure enough, she'd get on. She'd say, "With this bus?" "Oh, yeah, absolutely." So she still remembered bus routes and landmarks. But it's amazing how, your youthful memories, you can go, I know it's cliche, but you can remember stuff from 30, 40, 50, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years in her case, as clear as day, but you can't remember what you had for breakfast yesterday, right? And Mum was very much like that. So it was astounding how she would remember things. So you would see her walk with purpose. She knew exactly where she was going. And she would walk with confidence and pride. And she loved being back on her home turf. And it was just beautiful to see.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I am speculating, or I'm asking you to speculate on her own thoughts. Was it ever on the cards that she might return home and maybe bring you with her?
Well, it was definitely in her thoughts to go home, and it was towards the end, and she didn't know it was her end days. It was, a sickness that befell her, and within a few months she was gone. That's how rapid the cancer was, and she was just sick. And but prior to that, within a couple of years, she was saying how much she did want to return home. And she had mentioned to some friends that, maybe I'll go back home and settle there. And I understand it's very common once you maybe embrace or realize or you're self-aware of your own mortality that you want to go back from whence you came. For her, that would be Dublin, Rathmines, and just to get back there. But, friends would say, Peg, it's just not the same. And she's been back. It's not like she hadn't been back in decades. She would go back fairly regularly. So she had a sense of what it was like. But it's a different thing, I think, going back to visit and to see friends and to tour the countryside and stay for a few weeks at a B&B or somebody's house than it is to retransplant yourself back in a country that just isn't the same in the early 2000s than it was in the early 1940s or 50s. So that never happened. She got back. But now, that being said, I have always felt the pull. And because it's funny, the kids and Marlene give me a hard time in a fun way, because I claim I'm not Irish Canadian. I am Irish. I mean, it's the old Duke of Wellington expression. Just because you're born in a barn doesn't make you a horse. Yeah. But the fact is, so I ran it through Ancestry.ca. I said, okay, well, let's just see. And it comes back 100% Irish blood. Well, Mom and Dad were both Irish. My siblings are Irish. So just because I'm born in Canada, I'm a proud Canadian, but I consider myself more Irish than Canadian. And so I feel this inherent pull on my soul. I say to Marlene, look, I'm going through withdrawals, and I'm not being facetious, or I need to get back. And you feel, honestly, as soon as you leave Dublin Airport, the smell of that salt air, there's the smell of Ireland, whether it's the salt air, the Gulf Stream breeze, the smell of peat, whatever it is, combined, it just has this, it brings a gravitational pull to me that I just love being back. And the kids are that way too, because they've been there since they were infants and toddlers, had them baptized in Cork. They've got their citizenship, their Irish passports. And that was more of a pragmatic thing, thinking down the road in their 20s, to work in the EU, right? I mean, that is literally your passport to future opportunities. So we make sure, and I say to the kids, look, when I'm long gone, just make sure you're always maintaining your passport and get back as often as you can. And I'm not saying you have to go to Ireland all the time, although I would really recommend that. But just go wherever, but make sure you keep your passports and your citizenship intact. But I would love to go back, and the kids know that, and I've said to Marlene, also, I'd love to retire there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just a lovely place in the country.
I was going to say any place in particular.
So the O'Shea name comes from Kerry, and when I did some tracing many, many years ago, it was a sect of the O'Shea clan that broke away around the 1100s and set up shop in Tip. Wow. So I found that to be very interesting. And whether it's Tipperary or Kerry, I love the Southwest. Anyway,
that's where I'm from. I'm from Clare.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is relatively close.
Yeah. And Munster is what my heritage is as far as the bloodline. So even though Mom and Dad were Dublin, the roots go back to County Meath and Roscommon and other places. So not exactly into the Southwest, but if you go farther back. Anyway, I love Cork and Kerry and Clare and Sligo and Mayo, so all along the southwest and up into the west and Galway, and just somewhere out in the country would be lovely. I love the cliffs.
Yeah.
The Midlands are lovely too, but I love the ocean and the wild Atlantic way, and leave it to the Irish to turn an existing roadway into a tourist attraction and just
Genius.
make some improvements and put up some signs and extend a few roads here and there and get some EU funding for some pavement, and now you've got the longest coastal drive in the world, right?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to go back, Pa.
Is it conceivable, do you think?
I think so. Yeah, the kids are in university right now, so that's the focus and attention. Get a second job delivering pizza just to get them both through, right? As far as, the extra rents and the tuition and everything like that. But once that's done, and I think that they're on their merry way and they're settled, because, I'm an older dad, right? I'm 63 now, and they're only 20 and 18. So because of that, I'll be, if there is some sort of retirement, or at least another place in Ireland just to have set up so that they can have once I'm gone. That's still maybe 5 years down the road. Mm-hmm. So then pushing 70, right?
You're a practical person. I love the planning. You've really thought about this.
Well, I've got to do it now because time is of the essence, and it's running shorter by the day, right? So
good point. Yeah. Growing up in, I emailed you or I reached out to you to see would you do the podcast, and you neglected originally because you felt it was for contemporary Irish people or people who come over from Ireland, but then in the first part of this podcast you said, well, you feel more Irish than Canadian. So I understand you probably just misunderstood the maybe.
I thought it was for recent immigrants, that had come here and said and what their Canadian experience was like, rather than like a first generation Canadian like myself.
But I found a lot of the first generations I've interviewed have been arguably, and your mother obviously was extremely proud, but some of the first generations are even proud. And maybe sometimes it can skip a generation, maybe it would be your kids who would be the ones who would take the Celtic Studies courses and start watching the videos and learning the language. But you were into it straight away. You didn't question it at all from a young age. I assume it was never an embarrassing thing or potentially a negative thing growing up.
No, it was definitely a source of pride. I remember sitting down with Mom and Dad, and I had to do a family tree project, and this was for grade 9. So I was 14, and I still have it. And it's the whole family tree. So there are pictures and postcards of Ireland. I spent my summers in Ireland when I was 7 turning 8 and 8 turning 9. And the only reason why I didn't for subsequent summers was it was the heat of the Troubles. Yeah. And so this was 1970 and 71. I spent the summers in and around Dublin. And I loved it. I still remember, and I have highlights, and I remember reading the Beano comic books, and I know that was very much a UK thing, but it was still in Ireland as far as comic books and stuff. But the different candies that I would love, and the smell of all the diesel fuel in the streets, right? Because there was no emissions back then, right? So it's as you're walking down the main street, but that was such a triggering sensory scent that would bring me back to Ireland. And then that's one of the things I noticed when we go back is, well, there's not that diesel smell all the time, but
for the better.
But yeah, there are other scents, certainly in the countryside, that remind me that I'm in Ireland whenever I go back, right? So, so from doing that project when I remember, Mom and Dad were assembled, and now even though they had parted ways officially when I was 10 years old. But Mom and Dad were still best friends. Mom looking after him until the day he departed. He was 81, and that was 1999. But she was still paying his rent and looking out for him. She was his best friend until literally his dying day. So I was 14, but I was with Mom and Cullum, and we were living in an apartment. But still, Dad was in his living room, and I was getting all of these facts and dates and names to put together this family tree. And I still have it as part of the family archives. So there was that, and I was very proud. There's pictures of Mom as head flight hostess, and she was with Aer Lingus, with De Valera, And she was there from 46 to 49. 49, they got married, so that was, she was literally grounded after that, right? No more flying days.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of, but there was no, like, we've had Tegan, who's 20 now, in Irish dance. She was in Irish dancing for 14 years. But there was none of that for us. Like, we weren't immersed in the Irish culture to that extent. But as I alluded to earlier, there was entertaining, so there'd be friends, or there'd be singing, and all sorts of entertainment, and everybody regaling you with a certain yarn or poem. So there was that cultural influence as far as Ireland was in our house growing up. I found that I became even prouder and more curious the older I got, certainly now, and I would just drink the books that I would read, from The Great Hunger to, even Angela's Ashes, whatever, Frank McCord, and all sorts of different things. But I would prefer nonfiction rather than fiction. So I would take in whatever I could and learn as much as possible. And it's just fascinating stuff. I mean, what a history, going back, more than a millennium. So I took it all in, and Mum I remember back in 1989, and it was the millennium for Dublin, 88. So I was at one of my first radio stations when I was out west in Alberta for 8 years, and Mum was sending me with pride, the picture of the digital countdown clock in the Liffey as you looked over the bridge. I think it was the O'Connell. Yeah, must have been the O'Connell Bridge, not the Halfpenny. And, the countdown to the millennium. And then she sent me a VHS tape of Eurovision when Riverdance won in 94. So there was still this constant. So I think through osmosis and through lineage and my Irish blood and just everything, I always had that pride as well. Pops was more subtle, but he was still very, very proud to be Irish. So yeah, we inherited that, but I think it's brought out even more so for our kids to carry that on and to have them continuing the pride and the traditions that we have.
Yeah, that's great to hear that your children are just as interested, and I'm glad that I met someone recently, and she's first generation Hungarian living in Toronto, and I was talking to her about maybe moving back to Ireland and giving an Irish childhood to my children. And she made a point that your children won't know what childhood they don't have, what childhood they don't end up having, basically, whether they're born in Canada or Ireland or wherever. Because her parents are Hungarian, she was born in Toronto. She doesn't think about had she grown up in Hungary. But had you ever thought about if your mother hadn't left and you grew up in Rathmines?
Oh, yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, so one of those summers that I was there when I was very young, there was the opportunity, because Mum saw this as well, and maybe she didn't know the kind of upbringing or the future I would have in Toronto and Canada. And she was a fantastic mother and provided, and there was all the opportunities that were there. But I think she missed Ireland so much. And she even said, there was a point that she was frustrated because she was working so hard and she had so many obstacles to overcome, but she still not only survived, she thrived. But there were points where she was near the brink and near a breaking point. And she said, if I could have built a bridge back to Ireland and walked back home, I would have done it. I mean, that's how close it was for her at her wit's end. But she persevered, and her tenacity and strength and fortitude were remarkable. But as far as me thinking of what it would have been like had I grown up Irish, when I was there was an opportunity for me, if I did like it, to go to Blackrock and to go to boarding school there. And so that's how much Mum was on board for me to be, her youngest son to be away. And that speaks volumes as to the kind of upbringing you want some of your family to have. So I think she wanted to repatriate some of the family. I think of the same thing. I think of, I'd love it if my son married an Irish girl. If my daughter married an Irish boy. If Marlene and I retired, and
you might regret that decision.
Yeah, I know. We'll see.
Knocking on the door.
Yeah, exactly. But no, there, like I said, there is definitely that pull. I do think about or fantasize what a life back in Ireland would be like, but it's hard.
Yeah.
There's just no way. So what school? What group of friends did you hang out with? What job opportunities? Where'd you travel to? So many variables and possibilities. But I know that with the years left, and when you get into your 60s, you think of things in a finite number. People have said to me, somebody said this a few years ago, and I thought, wow, when you put it like that, that really frames the finite nature of your mortality. And you think, yeah, well, how many Christmases do you think you've got left? Not how many years, just how many Christmases, or how many summer vacations.
I've heard about summers. Yeah, how many summers do you have left?
Yeah. Just pick an annual sort of milestone or benchmark or whatever. Not birthdays, not years. Just how many summers with the kids, how many holidays with the kids. Yeah, how many Thanksgivings. Yeah. So that when you start pulling off the calendar pages and you think, and that's best case scenario.
Yeah. That's true.
If you're in great health and you've got the finances to do whatever it is you're doing and to maintain a lifestyle, and
are you religious? Out of curiosity.
I would consider myself more spiritual than religious. I mean, I'm not a practicing Catholic. I mean, I was an altar boy, and we still do the annual pilgrimage to St. John's Church for Christmas, and I'll be going for Easter. Unfortunately, that's about it.
I'm just curious because of the awareness of your mortality. It might just be you're a very practical person, but
I still talk. Well, I used to pray to Jesus, and now I pray to Mom, because I figure she's up there and she's got his ear. So, and it's amazing how daily and honestly, Pa, if it's something as innocuous as finding a parking spot in the least opportune environment and on a strict timeline, and I've got to be somewhere, and somebody just leaves and I'm there, it's like, thanks, Mom. It's immediately what I say. So I do believe in heaven, and I was raised a Catholic, and I'm not a bitter Catholic, although some of the things the church has done over the years. Both my aunts were nuns. And so it was tough for them to sort of navigate all the controversy and everything. My Auntie Kay, who just left us 8 years ago, I remember she was she was shaking her head at everything that was coming out with the Catholic Church. She just couldn't believe it. And I think she felt, a degree of embarrassment on behalf of the Catholic Church and how Ireland was so immersed in it. And then, you have the laundrettes and all of that, so that can definitely make it a tough sell as you get older. But the kids, like I said, will go to church, and they went to a public school only because the Catholic school didn't have French immersion and the public school did. So as a result, they have to go to Sunday school so that they could have First Holy Communion and confirmation and that. But so they're aware of that. And Tegan was in Ireland, last summer for the Young Ambassadors program. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, with Tim.
It'll be interesting to see what their future holds for them. But I was curious. Your mother left an urban environment for an urban environment, more or less. But you pine for the countryside, it seems to me, having lived your entire life, I'm assuming.
In a city, yeah. To me, because Dublin to me is one of the best walking cities there is, and I love it. I love the excitement. I love the energy from Grafton Street to Temple Bar, walking along the Liffey. I love it all, but to really get into that sense of Irish culture and hospitality and just the countryside, to me, that it's just so relaxing and so energizing and invigorating, and that's what I love. I love landing and being part of the Dublin scene, but after a while I've just got to get out, and I physically, it's so cathartic, and I just decompress, as the kilometers on the rental just start clicking up more, and in the rear view there goes Dublin, and it doesn't matter where we go, but it just out of the cities, whether it's Galway or Cork or Dublin, just getting out and the countryside. I just love it. There's the roads serpentining and the hills, and I love driving in Ireland.
Wow.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things. And, and I use it as a bit of an excuse. I'd say to Marley, well, I got to get a standard because it is cheaper, right? I don't want to get an automatic. It's more expensive. But I can't drive unless it's a standard. I want to have the fun of a stick, right-hand drive, left-hand side of the road, over the hills and far away. And
like a challenge.
Oh, it's the best. It's the best. I miss it all. So we are going back, as a matter of fact, in September for a week.
Okay.
And it'll be the first time in 20 years that we've gone without the kids. So that'll be different. Yeah. So, I'm looking forward to it.
What are your plans for that week?
Haven't really made any plans because it's all very recent. We're doing a week in Italy, going to the Vatican, staying in Sardinia, and a couple of days in Rome. And then I said, well, look, if we're going across the Atlantic, we can't go across the Atlantic without hitting Ireland. I mean, it's compulsory. Yeah. So we'll do that for a week. So I'll map it out. So Marlene's got the Italy portion that she will coordinate, and then I'll get down to it for Ireland and plan it out. So normally we'd go up around the Antrim coast and then swing down the west, maybe over to the Aran Islands, down into the Ring of Kerry, Cork, stay at a friend's, Shirkin Island for a few days, do it all. But it's been a long time since we've done the southeast, so I want to do a little Waterford, Wexford, Kilkenny.
You've heard this 1,000 times. You've probably seen more of Ireland than a lot of Irish people.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But I still find, and I'm one of the greatest ambassadors because I will always post on social media daily with chronicling a little bits of history or geography, and people. The amount of people that have emailed me or called me and said, "Look, we're inspired just from your posts from last month or last year or when you went a few years ago. We want to go to Ireland. Can you help us?" So I've got a template of places to do, depending on how long you're going for here. Try and do these are some of the things you can knock out.
I might borrow that off you sometime.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but I still find that for such a small island, it's a big country. There's so much that we haven't seen and done. And now in the era of influencers, everybody on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, all of these places, these are gems, and I'm bookmarking them and flagging them for, I've never seen that or heard of that, or there's some place we've got to go to. And
it's great.
Yeah, there's so much to see and do.
Benefits of the influencers, I suppose they do. I've noticed that too, watching a lot of videos of Europeans and Americans traveling to Ireland and finding places that I just didn't know existed.
Yeah.
Like, well, if I saw that, I'd say, I want to go there. And I think that's very typical of someone who's born there, the lack of appreciation until you move abroad.
Yes.
Whereas you were kind of left with that appreciation from a very young age, it seems. Are your siblings the same? Do they have the same respect for Ireland, same appreciation of it?
No. And I don't say that with any degree of malice or the fact that they don't want to. I don't. My brother Cullum, the last time he was in Ireland, he'd be too young to remember. I think he was only a toddler and went back with Mum when her mum had passed, Catherine Delaney. And so he wouldn't remember that. He hasn't been back since, I don't believe anyway. My brother Patrick, not since he was maybe in his early 20s. I think he did go for a little visit. Maria, my sister, has gone several times, and I rendezvoused with her once and that. But no, so Marlene and I, on average, would go every couple of years. And Mum, of course, was involved with the Rose of Tralee, so she'd be there every August for years. And then there were other times when she would just go on holiday. So there was very much that. But yeah, I would, Mum would say, "You're probably the most Irish of my children." And she would say that to me, and I would love that. And I'd say, well, I won't argue that. I'm just love it. It's, like I said, it's where I see myself settling down in my last chapter.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we'll see.
Good,
yeah.
Good. We might leave it there. Thanks very much, Rory.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me, Pop.
really hope you enjoyed that chat with Rory. It was a pleasure meeting him, and I look forward to meeting him again in the future as he settles into retirement in Ireland. Once again, all feedback is welcome. You can email me. My email address is in the description of the podcast, or you can find me on social media. It's always lovely getting messages from strangers and talking about the podcast and their stories of what brought them to Toronto. I would still encourage people to download the episodes and to share them with friends and family. Downloads are the easiest indicator for me to gauge how many people I'm reaching with these conversations, so I would really appreciate it. Thanks to Natalie Barbucci, who provided the logo for the podcast, and thanks to Shannon Heaton, who provided the music you are now listening to. You'll find all of her music on Spotify. There'll be another episode of Irish in Toronto in 2 weeks, and until then, slán go forward.